at St. Luke's. I'm just continuing with our series of videos where we look at how we worship together when we use the Book of Common Prayer on Sundays at St. Luke's. In my last video I talked about the opening prayer, the Collect for Purity, and how it's an opportunity for us to prepare our hearts to worship. Today I want to look at the second part, or the second movement in our liturgy, and that's the rehearsing or the summary of the law. On most Sundays, you'll hear something like this. Our Lord Jesus Christ said, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." After this is read by the minister, everyone responds by saying, "Lord, have mercy upon us, and write both these thy laws in our hearts, we beseech thee." Most Sundays we read this, and it's a reminder that as we come before God, we set up His law, His standard before us as a kind of measuring stick against our own lives. And when we say what Jesus said, that we should love our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, with our whole being, and that we should love our neighbors in the same way we love ourselves, we're showing that this is the most important thing for measuring ourselves against, for showing us where we stand in relationship with God. And then we respond by praying that God would have mercy upon us for the times we've fallen short of this, and that He would incline our hearts to keep this, that He would put it within our hearts to love God with all of our being and to love our neighbors as ourselves. On some other Sundays, we read a longer form of the law because, as I said before, this is a summary or kind of the whole of the law, which is another word for the Old Testament, kind of compacted into a few short sentences. The longer version that you might hear read during Lent or Advent or times where we're focusing especially on preparing our hearts for God, it goes through the whole 10 Commandments. The minister will say, "Don't have any graven images or idols before you." And the people respond, "Lord, have mercy upon us and incline our hearts to keep this law." And then we're reminded not to take the Lord's name in vain, to keep the Sabbath holy, to honor our parents, to not commit murder, to not commit adultery, to not steal, to not lie or to bear false witness, and to not covet those around us. And then after each law we respond by praying, "Lord, have mercy upon us and incline our hearts to keep this law." And the reason why we have this longer version and the short version is, like I said, this longer version gives us all the details of what it means to follow God. And the shorter version reminds us of the spirit of it, or the heart of it, and that's to love God with all that we are. You see, it's possible to follow the outward commands of the Bible, and inwardly to be bitter, to be resentful, and to be disobedient. We cannot murder someone and not commit adultery, but at the same time we can hate people in our hearts. And so as we recite this, we're reminding ourselves that it's important to God how we behave, how we obey Him with our lives, but more importantly is how we love Him with our heart. And if we're loving Him with our heart as Jesus calls us to, and if we're loving others the way we're meant to, then all of these other commands will just fall into place. So we do this each Sunday as we set this standard before us and prepare our hearts to worship, to ask for forgiveness, and to ask God's inspiration and grace so that we may follow and obey Him.